Hello, everyone, and welcome to JSA TV and JSA Podcast, the newsroom for telecom and data center professionals. I'm Laura Noland, and on behalf of the team here at JSA, thank you for tuning in to our latest virtual CEO Roundtable. Our first 100 registrants for today's Roundtable will have received a fresh lunch delivered to your door or a gift card to order your meal. So while you are beginning to enjoy those great meals, let's get things underway. As a quick reminder for everyone who has joined us today, we look forward to your participation during this event. So please feel free to add any questions that you may have right into the chat. And as usual, for the last 15 minutes of this hour, we will move our conversation over to LinkedIn, where you can engage with our participants directly. Simply type in hashtag JSA Virtual Roundtables or click on the direct link that will be posted in the chat. Once we're over there, we'll answer any questions that may not have been answered on camera. Now, if you have any questions about upcoming roundtables, whatever it may be, such as how to register or how to participate, just reach out to us at our website, jsa.net. By the way, just a reminder to mark your calendars. Our next virtual roundtable will cover lessons learned from COVID-19 and predictions for the new year ahead. And that'll take place on December 10th at 1 p.m. Eastern. So without further delay, let's get started. Our topic today is best practices for partnerships in next-gen network infrastructure. In any given year, your next-gen network infrastructure requires a highly collaborative effort between you and your partners to ensure effective execution. And in 2020, from the pandemic to the floods to fires and other challenges, relationship management has become critical for business survival. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our exceptional executive lineup who will weigh in on what it takes to develop, manage, and maintain valuable business partnerships. Joining us today, we have Manish Mata, VP of Marketing for Extenet, Dean Campbell, CTO at Light River, Frank DeJoy, Vice President Network Development at Render Networks, Ryan Barbera, CEO of Data Canopy, and Bill Steen, Director of Indirect Channels and Alliance Partner Marketing for Comcast. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Laura.
My pleasure.
Yes, Laura.
I'd like to start off with just a brief introduction from all of you. If you could tell us about your company and your role. Let's start with Ryan.
Hi, yes, thanks again for having us today. This is Ryan Barbera with Data Canopy. I'm the CEO here. Data Canopy is a global cloud services and infrastructure as a service provider. We have offices in North America, Europe, and in Asia, and we focus very heavily on hybrid and multi-cloud integration.
Let's go to Manish.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Manish Mata. I'm with Extenet Systems. Extenet Systems is the leading independent, privately owned owner and operator of distributed networks, and we are part of the communications infrastructure. We design, build, own, and operate distributed networks, which include small cells and DAS. We utilize a purpose-built fiber network to offer services, all for the carriers, for the MNOs, for the enterprises and building owners.
Okay, let's go to Dean, please. Excuse me.
Good morning, everybody. Dean Campbell, I'm the CTO of Light River Technologies. We're a network integrator. We design and build and help our customers deploy telecommunications networks, loosely kind of defined as the critical infrastructure. So that's your telephone companies, your cable companies, light rail, a variety of networks that that keeps the world running on an everyday basis.
Thank you. Let's turn to Frank now.
Hi, I'm Frank DeJoy. I'm Vice President Network Deployment. Render provides a construction management SaaS platform that transforms design data into deliverable work tasks, sequenced by software for optimal geospatial delivery in the field. Our platform enables paper and eliminates rather paper and manual handoffs from the workflows. So crews in the field can use iPads to very efficiently complete work in real time. Our clients include telcos, co-ops, ISPs, CLECs, construction and engineering firms across the US, Australia, and beyond who are deploying fiber, wireless, small cell networks at scale. In the US, our clients have delivered broadband to over 700,000 homes and businesses. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Bill.
Hey everybody, Laura, thanks for having me on. So most of you are probably familiar with Comcast. I'm part of Comcast Business, which is an $8 billion division within a larger organization. We have around $2.4 million business customers and have a pretty deep portfolio that we sell through direct and indirect sales channels, including data, networking, voice, security, video, and managed services.
Excellent. Thank you. Sorry, I got a little choked up off camera there. So thanks for bearing with me. We're going to start off the questions today with the digital age. So in today's digital age, enterprises have no choice but to modernize their network infrastructure. So what are some of the challenges that businesses face when designing and deploying a next-gen edge-ready network? And let's start with Ryan.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Laura. I think there's a lot of different issues that organizations can face, and I think that regardless of size, they're pretty ubiquitous. We've seen a lot of movement in the last few years away from the more traditional premise-based types of infrastructure, and organizations really starting to move to geographically redundant or multi-geo types of infrastructure, and that creates all sorts of issues. We really break it down into security, access, speed, meaning how quickly are you able to deploy and or reach those networks, and then the cost for doing those things. So as we talk to organizations, what we've really seen is that there's an awareness and a knowledge that there is this next generation of technology that needs to be implemented. It's required not just for internal process, but for clients as well, which I know some of the other panelists will discuss as they face that a little bit more head on. But what is the cost to do that? Finding the right partnerships in terms of how you're going to actually integrate your networks and start that digital transformation and move things away from your existing infrastructure out to the edge. How you're bifurcating and cutting apart the different parts of your network. It's a complete organizational redesign, and that can oftentimes be intimidating, especially for technology folks that have done things one way for a very long time. Nobody wants to have what we call an RGE, a resume generating event. So when we come in, we need to make sure that we're really working with people and that we're helping them understand the security concerns, the access concerns, the speed, and then ultimately the cost for those types of deployments.
And Manish, would you like to weigh in?
Absolutely. So I'll build on what Ryan said. I mean, today's workforce is increasingly dispersed. I mean, we're seeing that it's the pandemic effect that's happened. The applications have gone to the cloud. The enterprise applications are now residing in the cloud. Data suggests that roughly 70% of the enterprise apps are now residing in the cloud, with roughly about 90% by the end of next year. So the infrastructure too has to be decentralized, and this is something that we have focused on as a company at Extranet. We've decentralized the infrastructure where the access part of the network has been decentralized and come closer to the user. Now the core network is also becoming decentralized and getting close to the user as part of the edge network. Now you talked about the next gen edge ready networks, and there are 5 key areas that we feel that we should focus on, because keep in mind that the workforce today is highly mobile. So the use of mobile in the workforce has increased tremendously in the last few years, but even more this year. So if you keep that fixed mobile convergence in mind, and you have to bring in 5 key elements here. So the first part that we feel is the network scalability. So the network has to scale. To make it next gen, the network has to scale. It has to scale to demand. The services have to be predictable. So there has to be service level guarantees that come into play. For the services to be predictable, you have to build in the redundancy. You have to build in the diversity in the network itself, in the access layer. You have to bring in low latency applications. So the network has to be high speed, high bandwidth. So this is really important when you get to this whole 5G world, which we are all going to. The mission critical services have to be below 1 millisecond. So how do you make it, ready for mission critical services? How do you make the network ready for the high bandwidth, usage that is required in the financial world, in the healthcare? So all of these have to come together, and then at the end of it all, there has to be secure. The network has to be secure. So it has to be highly scalable. It has to be predictable. It has to have the low latency, the high bandwidth, and highly secure. So this is all something that are key challenges right now for us, as an industry, as we go about, providing that end-to-end, user experience, that's required both in the fixed and the mobile world.
Thank you, Manish. Dean, can you weigh in?
Yeah, that's tough act to follow these two guys. I did want to talk about 2 points, and I think we're all in violent agreement here. We're talking about how network services are becoming just increasingly critical to any kind of business out there. The workforce is dispersing. It's becoming the lifeblood of the business to be able to communicate between your employees, between your departments and locations. At the same time, we're seeing almost all the businesses under tremendous competitive pressure. So they are really beginning to focus on their core competency. And what we're finding, quite frankly, is this ability to be able to partner with other companies, find trusted advisors that can help them through the decisions so nobody gets a resume generating event, to help them with this new technology, with the speed with technology is changing, help them make these decisions, help them do the research and put together great solutions, and then help them get implemented. We're asked every day from customers, help us, because we view this as critical and becoming more critical to the lifeblood of our company, but we simply don't have the people with extra cycles to do the research and help us move forward and keep up with as fast as technology is advancing. So, increasingly it's becoming about how good is your Rolodex. That's how you keep up your competitive advantage versus can I do it all myself? We find a lot of value working with clients in that kind of role.
Thank you, panelists. We're going to move to another thought topic, IoT devices. With 3 billion new IoT devices estimated to deploy by 2023, what steps are being taken to prepare for IoT and Wi-Fi 6? So let's start with Bill.
Hi, thank you so much. Looking at that, it's a really interesting topic because I think a lot of customers, are very familiar with Wi-Fi, but are newer with the IoT side of things. And one nice advantage Comcast has is we have a whole company focused on IoT called Machine Q. So Machine Q has been out there for years. It is building lots of different solutions for different verticals, for different low technologies. In talking to VP of Engineering a few days ago, coincidentally, he was talking about the new Comcast Center that we recently completed about a year or two ago. And the 65-story tower has 2,500 Wi-Fi gateways in it to serve the people that are, in the building. We have 16 Machine Q gateways for our IoT within the building. So the amount of low latency, low power range that is provided by IoT is truly amazing. And it's really about, using the right hammer on the right nail for customers that are looking at how they do inventory management, how they do temperature management. And there's so many fascinating use cases where customers are getting significant savings, where instead of going, gosh, we have 10,000 mousetraps set up across our warehouse, which ones popped last night, right? IoT can enable that. You can put a chip on there and say, oh, these 6 did. Go pick those up. So there's just so much potential there that we're seeing it as a real opportunity to talk to customers about automation.
All right, thank you, Bill. Manish, would you like to add?
Sure, Laura, thank you. Bill said all the right things, but I'll just build on this in terms of what we are seeing out there from an infrastructure perspective. When people talk about IoT, they talk about Internet of Things. And our CEO, Jim Hyde, when he joined a couple of years ago, he talked about the real IoT is the infrastructure of things. And this is something that we've kind of built into our motto here and within the company is we have to build the infrastructure of things, the real IoT, before we can do the Internet of Things. And while we see a lot of activities going on, a lot more has to happen. So in a lot of the industries today, when you're building the in-building network, if you may, whether you're in the industrial side or you're in the healthcare, it doesn't really matter. For IoT to happen, the networks have to be built from within. And when I say the network, again, go back to my previous comment about mobile networks. The mobile networks, which has wires attached to it, the fiber that comes into to attach to it, that becomes really critical to actually enable that whole Internet of Things, the IoT. That network has to be built from within and is being built today, but a lot has to happen today to make that work. So now you talk about the edge and how does that play in, right? And you talk about the building management systems, for instance. There is a need for data collection to happen for IoT to work. And that really means there has to be a high density of sensors, in place for the data collection to happen. And that high density of sensors requires a high capacity network within the building or buildings, campuses. When you then you'll have to look at how does the data get controlled. And for the data to get controlled, you need a dispersed set of sensors in the facility. And for that, you need coverage in the network. At the end of the day, it's all about the data engine. The edge has to be put closer to the user or to the end, usage, wherever the use case is happening for the system to really work. And right now, we are in very early stages of building this infrastructure of things, for the future.
Right. Thank you, Manish.
Thank you.
Using infrastructure that provides strong investment protection is imperative to support today's needs and in the future unpredictable demands. What types of solutions are you recommending that are scalable, flexible, and limit business disruptions? Let's start with Bill.
Yeah, I think I have a couple thoughts on that. I mean, one of the things that we're definitely seeing is as we rolled out our SDN platform 3-4 years ago, we built it over the top so that customers could use different underlay networks. And we are seeing a lot of customers really look at configuring it in a high available manner with a fiber connection, a coax connection, and an LTE as for backup. So I think one of the things that's very important for investment protection is two things. One is, partnering with the right network providers that can really provide that scale so they can take you from 2 megs up to 10 gigs, depending on how you grow and exactly how big of a network you need to have and how much speed you need to have. Then also thinking about, the difference between symmetrical and some of the things that can be put in like Ethernet over HFC and some of these types of technologies. The other thing that I think is important is to work with partners that give you a lot of pricing flexibility or financial flexibility, meaning providing fully managed service, so you can outsource some of the support, but then also having no ETFs or early termination fees. So you can trial stuff, put it in 5 sites, make sure it's right for you, and if it isn't, then you can step away from it so that you're not locked into a contract for that overlay.
Thank you, Bill. Ryan, I would like to ask you the same question.
Appreciate it. And what I was saying was I think Bill has really hit on the flexibility and the scalability. And I think in the world that we're in, and it's been sort of the theme throughout all of the comments that we've heard, things are changing at a pace that's pretty unbelievable in terms of the marketplace in general and then how companies are approaching it. So specifically when companies are picking infrastructure, what it really comes down to now is scalability and elasticity. All of these questions are really driving towards the same thing, which is that organizations today really need to take a look at their infrastructure from a standpoint of how quickly can we scale this up, how quickly can we build, and then what is the cost point for that? I mean, Bill was really talking about things like ETFs and managing costs. I mean, the reality is if you had endless budget and endless time, you could do just about anything. But for all the clients that I'm sure most of us work with, the discussion always realistically is how do we, and I hate to use the term, but how do we future-proof this? And so the technologies that we're recommending today really are designed to allow for that quick scalability, whether it's on the cloud platform that somebody's looking at, the orchestration or the automation tools that somebody's using. And I know we're going to talk about that in a minute. Taking a look at the underlying network in terms of the actual connectivity, whether they're using SD-WAN, whether they're using flex type of solutions. So those things are so critical because as these organizations are growing, and as the use of data, as IoT, as all of these things are starting to come more and more into play, the flexibility and the elasticity, the scalability is the most critical component for us in terms of starting to pick some of the infrastructure. And then what tools can you incorporate into that? As I said, there's some tools that are really great, they're really cost effective, but they're very bespoke or limited in terms of what we can incorporate into that versus other tools that may have a little bit more service required up front, but give an enormous amount of scalability in terms of where we can go. And so we are really starting to take a look at technologies that allow for scale beyond what we thought was possible, even 3 or 4 years ago.
Right. Can we get your thoughts?
Sure. I recommend, of course, solutions that are scalable, future-proof, secure, and use open architectures. Examples include, standard edge models or even pre-staged edge centers, cloud-based software management tools that connect the locations and ecosystem during deployment and operations, and even open and very secure APIs, so all partners can access. Sort of fundamental capabilities and building blocks for efficient deployment and operations and maintenance post-deployment.
All right, thank you. Our next discussion point talks about automation and analytics. So how can automation and analytics help simplify operations and resolve user impacting issues? Let's start with Ryan.
No, great. Thank you. So this is actually an area where Data Canopy just believes that there's almost blue ocean in terms of the things that are going on in the space. So, obviously as a cloud architect, we believe very heavily in automation and orchestration tools. So, technologies like a Kubernetes, Docker, leveraging microservices inside of applications, really refactoring and optimizing applications to work with the edge network to create efficiencies that potentially previously didn't exist. And it's been talked about again a couple of times on this call in terms of things like distributed network, leveraging geographical efficiency and least cost latency to help clients. And so when you really start to get into taking a look at analytics, taking a look at how we're interpreting the data, how we're then turning that data into business case and using that data to design where you're going to build your next facility or where you're going to put your staff or any of those types of things, we can actually start to use that data to do that. And then leveraging that automation, whether it's containerization or some of the other technologies that we're using for faster deployment, more cost-effective deployment, leveraging microservices for better performance. So this particular area for us, and I probably got a little more excited than I needed to for this, but these types of technologies in the space that we're in are really what's starting to differentiate how our client base can use cloud technology to improve their organizations and to better integrate with the edge, which before now has been a lot of very heavy lifting on the network side, but we're really starting to see that marriage of the application and cloud to the edge in a way that's much more seamless than it used to be.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Frank, would you like to weigh in on this one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, big data and analytics can significantly speed network deployments and simplify operations to really help resolve user impacting issues. From a deployment perspective, geospatial data from field personnel can streamline productivity, reduce paperwork costs and schedules. At Render, we've seen our network operator and construction partners use our geospatial technology, big data, and automation to reduce large-scale deployment schedules up to 50%. From a maintenance perspective, operators are using big data and machine learning analytics to more quickly isolate network outages or even detect potential performance issues before they happen with predictive analytics.
Right. Thank you, Frank. Dean, what are your thoughts?
Yes, thanks. So I share some of the excitement in this area. It's been interesting to watch over the years as the networks themselves, the technology that powers a lot of these networks has been somewhat opaque for quite a long time. And just recently now, we're starting to see, from the ground up, from the equipment on up, the ability to see what's going on, to get information out of the gear, to get statistics and performance monitoring out of all different points in the network. And whether you're on the enterprise kind of consumer side or on the service provider supply side of this communications, the ability to see what's going on is critical to see not only what's wrong and fix it, but to proactively see what might go wrong. We've been involved in this for a number of years. I've actually developed some software solutions. We have a product, and we've got case after case now of users that are eliminating truck rolls or reducing truck rolls, really reducing mean time to repair by being able to see what's going on in the network and being able to see not only what's going on now, but what might be going on 3 weeks, 3 months from now based on performance statistics. From the consumer side, we're even talking to a number of our enterprise customers that are really looking at these analytics to produce measurable business gains, looking at where application performance, where infrastructure is not supporting the applications in the way they need, and that really does impact productivity, business efficiency of their operations. How do you streamline your network connectivity to give you better application performance and increase performance of your field personnel or your office personnel? And how do you really fully leverage the resources that you are buying? So capacity planning types of things where you can limit your overall spend, but yet increase business capability. All these things come out of those big data numbers, come out of that instrumentation of the network and being able to see what you're using, what's working, what's not working. Tremendous area for increasing productivity and efficiency in this communication space. Yeah, we love it.
All right. Thank you, Dean. New trends in digitization and hybrid cloud have a direct impact on how networking and application security are implemented across environments. What services enable secure workloads in any cloud environment? I'd like to start with Manish.
Thanks, Laura. So I think first off, I think we should look into how the physical layer of the network interacts with the transport layer and the application. So at the base level, you need the physical layer, which is again, I come back to the infrastructure. You need the infrastructure to deliver that high level of security and services that come into play. So the physical layer has to have that high capacity fiber, has to have the endpoints from a mobile network perspective enabled. The transport layer today is extremely important because you've got to be able to connect to the data centers in a secure environment. So you have to connect to the data centers and you have to connect between data centers. You have to have a diversity built in so that the network is never, there's no single point of failure in the network. And then you have to have the application layer built in, which is the connectivity to the cloud. So all of that has to work together. It has to be a dedicated, flexible architecture like we talked about. And in that whole realm, you have to have the predictability of the services come into play. You have to make sure that the network can scale for the right network requirements, and then it has to be secure. So it has to be highly encryption based, so that you can transfer data in the most secure environment. So as we transition to this hybrid cloud, in fact, as we have transitioned to the hybrid cloud, this secure environment has become even more important, and the underlying network that takes this or provides you the connectivity has to be bolt on, secure, end to end.
Hey, thank you, Manish. Ryan, we're going to send it over to you.
I was saying I couldn't agree more with what Manish was saying. I actually wrote down a few notes for this particular question, and the number one thing that I talked about was security, because what we see, and Data Canopy, we like to say we work a lot with regulated or complicated companies, right? And the companies that we work with are healthcare, financial services, government, those types of organizations. And so they're dealing with issues of latency. They have very specific location-specific requirements. So we work with organizations that are doing work in Europe and Asia and all over the globe that have specific local requirements in addition to their own internal policy. If you're doing work in China, you have a whole nother bag of issues to deal with, the Great Firewall, and so on and so forth. So when we start to really talk about how you integrate a hybrid multi-cloud approach and how you're actually managing workloads, it's probably for us from a security standpoint one of the most one of the biggest conversations that we're now having with our clients, because it used to be it was a more monolithic type of environment, and as these services have started to get chopped up, pushed further out to the edge, and then you have different people in different locations accessing these services from all over the globe, the complexity of that security. And to Manish's point, that includes everything at every single layer. So, the technologies that we're recommending now go all the way from your physical layer, all the way up through the application layer, where we're doing different services in different locations. Some services can't be in some locations. So when we talk about really managing workloads in our multi-cloud and our hybrid cloud environments, we're doing it almost location by location, but then you still have to have the master kind of security policy as well. So that for us is probably the hardest and the number one conversation that we're having is how do we really execute on a security strategy across a geospatial type of an environment.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. You do have a chance to redeem yourself on the mute button. I think we have a few more comments and thoughts coming up for you in just a bit, so get ready. And next, we're going to go to Dean. Dean, I'd like to get your thoughts to round out the last thoughts on this discussion point.
Yeah, I think Manish and Ryan have covered a lot of it. We work with both providers and consumers across a number of industries, and they're now dealing with a complex environment where their particular industry may have data at rest and now increasingly data in flight security requirements. They need to be able to secure their communications. And at the same time, their network is being more and more fragmented. We've talked about this move to the work from home kind of model. We're seeing the rise of, at first it was the branch kind of SD-WAN model with remote branches running over bring your own connectivity. Now we're seeing this rise of the SASE kind of secure edge where it's almost down to an individual user. Almost all the industries we're working with are really moving toward almost a zero trust model where you have to really secure almost every device, every communication pathway. It is the number one conversation we have with customers right after, can you get me from A to B? It's okay, but now I can get there, but now it needs to be secure. I need to be able to monitor it, and I need to be able to rely on it. These are the number one conversations we're having with people across the board. And just to echo a comment I made earlier, the the criticality of network communications. Businesses can't rely on handing paper from one desk to another. They have to be able to communicate electronically, or they just can't do business today. It's becoming their lifeblood.
Okay, thank you very much. And this is our final discussion point for this session. We do have a few audience questions that are coming in. We're going to get to address those as many as we can during the time we have together. So let's start with this last question here. What next-gen infrastructure predictions can you offer? So this is going to go to the entire panel and just weighing in on your next-gen infrastructure predictions. So let's start with Manish.
Thanks, Laura. Again, so I think it's the prediction that I would make is we as an industry are going to go back into the grassroots and trying to again get back into the trenches and figure out, what is the network architecture, really require for the network of the future. And the network of the future, and today, I mean, we're at a significant, I would say, inflection point here, where what we are building today is going to define, because we have the early stages of 5G, and 5G as a technology will transition, a lot of the activities that we take, not only in a personal life but in a business life also, right? Where you get back to is how do you build that physical, the underlying network with fibers, small cells, macros, all working together. How do you get that edge infrastructure in place? Because the edge infrastructure will be super important. You see different companies in our industry do different things with the edge. You have the tower companies bringing in the edge, at the tower space. We are working on different, bringing the edge even closer to the user from an in-building perspective. Okay, so we are looking at pico hubs, we are looking at micro hubs, we are looking at nano hubs, and seeing how these hubs are going to be, designed and deployed so that they can enable that edge. You need the edge intelligence, you need the edge routing, you need the edge caching and content distribution, and so on. That has to happen. All of that requires the edge to be closer and closer to the user for that end user experience to happen. And then everything has to then connect to the cloud. So at some point right now, what we are looking at is getting back to the grassroots and designing that network of the future. And that's my prediction right now is 2021 will be about enabling this transition to the cloud. But at the same time, the CIOs and the visionaries are going to go back to the grassroots and look at how you truly design this network that can do can enable the applications that will ride on 5G and the future Gs that come into play.
All right, thank you, Manish. Bill, let's turn it to you.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Manish said there. I think the other thing that we're excited about is DOCSIS and where that leads us in terms of getting into DOCSIS 4.0 and getting to 10 gigs at some point to keep those wire connections. I think the other two trends that we're seeing is kind of the use of software-defined networking and the virtualization of hardware, basically at the branch office, that a lot of customers are looking to simplify that experience and not have a box for their UTM and a box for their wireless and a box for their firewall and a box for this and a box for that. Let's convert that all to software. Let's make them VNFs. Let's have a universal CPE that's at that branch, and let's be able to push policies and be able to centrally manage that. Will be a big trend. The other thing I think that this work from home phase will continue. We're going to see people continue to have that kind of a model, which will drive some interesting challenges, I guess, for security, as well as for just having a good high-speed, experience for those people working from home, so that, they'll have their residential connection for internet for the kids and their schoolwork and their gaming and the spouse doing their work, but then also dropping in a second connection and really having kind of a business class internet connection into the home to really drive the high performance that people will need, as work from home continues.
Thank you, Bill. Dean, let's hear from you.
So I've got a couple big themes I think that are pretty broad based across the networks, both the supply and demand side. One is simplification. We've seen the hyperscalers, the web scale guys come in and be very disruptive over the past probably 10 years now in driving the complexity out of the network, driving down the cost per bit, that kind of thing. And part of their strategy was to drive down the complexity. So we're seeing increasingly the different network layers being collapsed, the devices being collapsed. So they're simpler to use, they're more transparent. And along with that, automation. We talked about SDN a little bit, I think Bill mentioned, the ability to actually manage these devices programmatically so that now we don't need 10 people watching a network to make sure everything's running. We let the network monitor itself and just alert somebody if there's a problem that needs physical intervention. So this ability to simplify, to automate, and that's going to enable, Manish talked a little bit about the IoT and the scale of the networks and the reach of telecommunications, from not just, a guy sitting at a desk in an office, but now it's to every street light and to every road sign that might be talking back to the network and providing information or getting its instructions. That complexity, that vast increase in reach and scale of the communications networks, we need to simplify, we need to automate it, and then that's going to just unleash, I think, this IoT wave of increase in scale.
Thank you, Dean. Frank, what are your predictions?
Okay, yeah. I certainly expect an acceleration in the shift to edge computing, not only due to technology and applications that we've talked about, but also due to the broadband demands caused by the COVID pandemic. I mean, we're already seeing the impacts, some of which we see in everyday life, like the video streaming companies, downgrading default video, video settings from HD to standard, and some maybe not so obvious things happening, like wireless operators deploying micro edge data centers at the cell sites. But I see that increasing over time. The other thing is, no matter which IoT number of connected devices forecast you see, it's all in the billions. I've seen, grow to 50 billion over the next few years. It's all very high, and we didn't talk much about the increased security risks caused by IoT devices. Many of these devices lack security in them, or are neglected when they're deployed in an enterprise. Outdated software or default credentials that can be used as backdoors into corporate networks, and it's a big concern of the enterprise. So even despite those risks, I still see the IoT deployment to grow, but I also see IoT security solutions and practices will grow. And then finally, two more things. This tremendous demand for broadband and video-centric applications will require, businesses and deployment teams to be more efficient, do more with less, and SaaS-based automation tools and maintenance tools will enable that. And also businesses should engage ecosystem partners, know what they know what they don't know, and engage companies and partners such as those on this panel to help make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And Ryan, let's get your thoughts.
All right. Well, I'm unmuted. A good start. So, but yeah, I agree with a lot of what was said here. I think that where I see the future is that there really won't be something that we think of as the edge anymore. I think that as IoT, as we see more devices connected in, as people start to really leverage the types of technologies that we've always historically talked about as business, but now get more into end user and consumer, and as people work from home, and as there's more e-learning and all of the things that we're seeing, I think you're just going to see a massive increase in consumption, a massive increase in data, a massive increase in everything. And I actually don't know that we can quantify it yet. I think that we think of ourselves as big consumers of data and consumers of network and edge today. But I think this is really the first inning of a 9-inning game. I think you're going to see an acceleration of that as organizations become more decentralized, or as they start to leverage these technologies in a more efficient way to broaden their own reach. As the cost for a lot of this goes down, you'll see more adoption in smaller companies, which will increase competition with all organizations. So I don't think that we're seeing a small shift in the market. I think that this is going to be seismic, and I think that this is really the next evolution. One thing that Frank said that does have me concerned is I do believe that we are also racing to catch up on security. And so where I think the future is going to go is that we need to temper adoption of some of these technologies with the need for the right types of securities, because there is still a major concern in that space. And I do agree with Frank on that it's moving at a pace that, security always has trouble keeping up in general because of just the nature of technology, right? But what we're seeing now is that it's moving way too fast. So that does give me a little bit of a restlessness at night, but I know there's a lot of smart people out there, including some of the people on this call, that are working to crack that nut. But I think we're just seeing the beginning of what is going to be a seismic shift in how data is consumed, used, analyzed, and how it affects our lives in all different ways, business and personal.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ryan. Appreciate it. And unfortunately, that is all the time we have for our on-camera event, our virtual event, but there's more to come. Hang on. I do want to thank our expert panelists for a great discussion today, informative, insightful, and definitely more conversations to be had on this topic. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And on behalf
Thank you, Laura.
Sure, absolutely. And on behalf of our panelists, I'd like to thank you, everyone, for tuning in and participating in today's roundtable. Just a quick reminder, our speakers are staying on for the remainder of the lunch hour to answer any more of your questions on LinkedIn. And we did get quite a few questions come in through our chat box. So thank you so much for sending those our way. You will see our speakers over on LinkedIn. Just search hashtag JSA Virtual Roundtables or click the direct link in the chat box. You can see it right there in your chat box to continue this Q&A session. And viewers, if you are one of the first 100 registrants, we hope you enjoyed your lunch. Make sure you visit us at jsa.net to register for more upcoming JSA virtual roundtables, including our next one and last one for 2020, which takes place on December 10th, where leaders in our industry will talk about lessons learned from COVID-19 and predictions for the new year ahead. That is a wrap. So look out for the playback of today's roundtable coming soon to JSA TV and JSA podcasts on YouTube, iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, and more. In the meantime, see you over on LinkedIn, and happy networking.
Thank you.
Thank you.